an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Fleabag, Season 2, Episode 2. In this episode, we learn that first and foremost, you have got to think ahead and figure out how you're going to insult someone, lest you end up calling them a weakie. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Bert for commissioning this episode. Oh my God, you guys. That scene was so heartbreaking because I hate that man so much. I wanted her to rake him over the coals. I was so excited. And then it just completely withers and dies by the end. So feeble. And because it doesn't end strong, he is able to completely overlook everything that she said previous. And it shouldn't work like that, but it does. You know, and I don't think I have ever hated a character on television the way that I hate Martin. Like, he just strikes so many notes of the bad person. Bingo? I'm conflating my metaphors, but you know what I mean. I think part of what causes me to have the reaction to him that I do is that he feels like a real person. And so many people out there, like people in TV and movies, you can hate them in the way that you hate a villain. But they don't necessarily feel like a connection to actual life. And he just feels like somebody that you would run into. And the way that he manages to just slide his little comments in, and the smugness that rolls off him, it's like, it's so sticky and gross, and I hate it. And I want so badly for him to be taken down several pegs. And I don't know if that's ever going to happen, because that's not the kind of show this is. You know, we don't have or at least I don't think we do. But this doesn't seem like the kind of show that's interested in giving people their just desserts. It's the kind of show that's like, here are all these people living, and I'm going to show you the various levels of fucked upness about them, and we're going to stand back and see what happens. And they're just allowed to live. Now, my personal private hope is that eventually Claire will indeed leave him, but I don't know if that... I want Claire to be so much stronger than she is in regard to herself. You know, she has this sort of attitude that makes her seem as if she's this force. But when it comes to setting boundaries for herself, it's just not there. And relatable. That's all I'm saying. Karen, you're a strongie, Natasha. Thank you, Karen. Oh, God. Okay, so the episode starts off in church with the turning and shaking hands and saying, "Peace be with you," to a bunch of strangers. Guys, have you ever gone to a church that does this? Because I swear to God, I feel like I want to curl up and die every time I get to this part. The shaking of hands and "peace be with you" makes my whole body contract until every surface is concave and I'm like a pebble on the floor. I don't know why I have such an extreme aversion. I don't know if it's the performative nature of it, if it's the fact that these are people that I don't know, and I feel like I'm inviting a later conversation somehow that I'm not at all interested in having. Or I don't know what it is, but I really hate it so much. And I will tell you that I was genuinely surprised that it basically passes without incident. I thought there was going to be a moment where Fleabag like has a bit of awkwardness shaking somebody's hand, or there's somebody who like comes back and shakes her hand again, and it seems like maybe they're actually a little bit creepy and they just, no, nothing. And on the one hand, I'm relieved because I don't want there to be more awkwardness because I'm already cringing horribly at this. But on the other hand, I felt like it was a bit of a missed opportunity, or just a little bit maybe insulted that the thing that I hate so much doesn't even get a proper send-up in the show. I don't know. I took it a little personally. That's all I'm saying. So, obviously, as soon as we see her here, I'm like, okay, so the priest is going to be the hot priest, right? And he is indeed up there with his black eye and his hair that looks like he rolled out of bed. I love her saying the Lord's Prayer as she looks around at all of the artwork that is hanging up around the church. And most of it involves women sort of like kneeling in front of Jesus or kissing his hand or whatnot. And there's an expression on her face of just intense disgust at it. And then eventually he says, please be seated. And she says, and also with you, very loudly at the wrong moment, and realizes her mistake. And this causes him to see her smile and completely lose track of what he was going to say. This, in my opinion, is a very good sign. Now, will this man leave the priesthood for Fleabag? This is the question. Because I take it for granted that he will fall in love with her. Because he must. That's simply how it will go. He has to. Come on. But will he sacrifice it all? Give up God? Not really, but And I really want to know more about him before I can make any sort of like definitive statement. On the one hand, I kind of like hope he will because I just want her to be happy. On the other hand, like lusting after somebody completely unavailable is very safe. And that might be part of why because she's trying to be a little bit healthier in her choices in her life. That means a lot of things. And maybe she's feeling like an actual relationship is sort of off the table for her right now, but somebody that she can't really be with, who isn't actually an option, is safe, and that makes them kind of attractive. Because let's be honest, like the hot priest thing, that's a major like fantasy. That is, you see that in porn all the time, and half of it, I think, is the forbidden nature, at least half. The fact that it's sacrilegious, So, I mean, I was just listening to those of you who are looking for a fun mystery series, the Franny Fisher mystery series by Carrie Greenwood. I was just listening to the audiobook of it this morning, and her lover is like undercover somewhere and dressed as a priest. And she just happens to run into him when he's dressed like that. And she just has this moment of like, oh my goodness, he looks very good in the cassock. My God. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I could see it. I could see that would like do it for you. Not necessarily as much for me, but I get it, So is he, the next question is, used to this sort of reaction from women? I mean, if you are an attractive priest, that has to happen. The very fact, I mean, you've all watched The Sopranos also, right? But the very fact that there is a way that you can like justify seeing this person also, who for a lot of people who are in a committed relationship, but going to see the priest feels very virtuous, and they can say that they're going to do this and be totally blameless. However, what they're doing is going to hang out with a hot person for half an hour, you know? I have to imagine that this is something that happens a lot. And thus, what it comes to is really, is she going to excite his interest as well, versus the doubtless myriad of women? It doesn't seem like he has a big congregation, so I'm saying myriad a bit tongue-in-cheek, but you get it. And I think based on his response to her here and the way he completely loses track of what he was saying, that seems like it's a good sign. I feel like that sounds like, yeah, he is going to sort of, or not even going to do something about it, but just that he feels a connection with her as well. So anyway, we jump to the end when he is greeting everybody at the door. And there is this woman. We're going to talk about her in a second. But she comes to greet him. He says, "I thought you'd be in prison by now." And she says, "They keep trying, but they just won't have me. I'm sorry about your eye." And he says, "It's okay. It gives me a bit of an edge. I've told them some heroic bullshit." So almost everybody leaves at this point and like files between the two of them and sort of interrupts this conversation. And she tries to pay him back for dinner and he won't hear of it. And she's holding the money out to him. And in the background, there's this woman bustling around. And she comes up, "I'm going to take the candles, Father. They're a bit clogged up." And he says, "Okay, Pam. Well, the hairdryer is in the wonky drawer. Yes, I know. Hello, love. Is that for the collection? How sweet." And she just takes the money right out of Fleabag's hand and puts it in the box. Question. Is Pam in love with the priest? I think she might be in love with the priest. There's just an intensity. And I can't tell if, like, maybe Pam is going through some shit and she's just channeling all of that into her volunteering. Maybe that's all it is. I'm saying volunteering. I don't know. Maybe she works for the church. I don't even know. But there's just... the only reason that I hesitate to say that she's really into him is because she doesn't seem to have any territorial reactions to Fleabag talking to him. And I would expect her to, if she felt something for him, to be a little bit like trying to insert herself into the conversation, take his attention away from her, manage to find a way perhaps to get him to cut the conversation short, something like that. And yet, just the whole vibe, there's this desperation that I'm just like, oh, honey, god damn, we need to get you laid. Somebody quick. Like, I just... and his reaction to her is, to me, indicative of somebody who is used to this intensity and is always trying to sort of calm her. And she's like impervious to that. It doesn't feel like there's any sense of her being like aware of how she's coming across. Karen says, "I think she definitely has her eye on him, although she does interrupt them later at the carnival." That's true, but she does interrupt them, and I guess you're right, like, there could be an aspect of this too, where it's not even like purposeful, but because like I'm sort of picturing it as her being aware of her own feelings and thus going, well, I don't want him talking to this girl who's much more age appropriate and, young and attractive. I am going to step in and stop them from talking. It may just be a lot more subconscious than that, where maybe she's like into him and isn't even quite aware that's what it's about. People are very good at denial. And thus she feels the urge to interrupt them, and she isn't even like aware that she's doing it for a specific reason because she isn't interrogating that at all. But either way, I feel like we're going to see a lot more from Pam, and I'm honestly looking forward to it because there is so much potential for some weirdness there. Like, there really is. So he asks Fleabag to come back to his office and have a cup of tea. And I love the depiction of his office because let me tell you guys, I was going to say priest office specifically. I've only been in like 2. And let's say just like religious buildings have offices, and a reverend's or minister's office looks much more like this one than any of the ones I've seen depicted in other. And that's not to say that those other depictions don't exist, but I tend to see this sort of thing depicted as a very stead sort of almost like somber room, a study that's done in dark paneling and is really intense and private feeling and very official. Every time I have been in a room like this, it has been this sort of thing where it feels like they crammed a desk into a storage closet. Most places, the person who is sort of the head of the church does not spend a lot of time in their office. They usually spend a lot of time in like the community room, but they won't be in their office that often, especially if it's a place that like has an actual confessional booth and stuff where people go to speak to them. Or if they have like Bible studies outside of church or things like that, it's just not as frequent. So when we cut to that and there's like these piled up boxes in the corner, unlabeled, half open, there's stuffed animals all over the place. There's scraps of craft paper. There's pens. There's like, one of the lamps' shade is like all tilted and just the place is a disaster. And I was just like, oh, this is great. This is exactly it. So he comes in, spills the tea right away, does a very like sort of half-assed job of cleaning it up, and uses, I don't know if he uses like napkins that weren't meant for that or if they're pieces of paper or what. But he then sits down and they begin to have a cup of tea and immediately is like, do you just want booze? I've got a can of GT from M&S. And she starts to say, well, and he says, I will if you will. And I was sort of surprised that she went with it. I mean, he's very forceful, so I guess. But it does sort of worry me that maybe he has a bit of a drinking problem, that just sitting through a cup of regular tea was a little bit too much to ask. Are you all right? Are you cool? You all right? So she says, are you a cool priest? And he's like, I have no friends and I read a lot. Are you a cool person? And she says, I'm a very normal person. And he says, what does that mean? And she says, well, I don't believe in God. And the instant she says that, the big framed painting behind her on the wall falls to the ground. And I love it. She turns and looks at it and then looks at the priest and he just smiles and says, I love it when he does that. And honestly, that was a good moment. I don't know if any of you have experienced little moments like that. Like, I've never had anything that is that direct, but I have seen things like that happen where it's just like something will occur and it's just a coincidence, but it feels very significant. Like, if you are superstitious, there's no way to not see, oh my God, you know? And I like to think that there's like a button under the edge of the desk that he pressed to knock the painting down the instant that she said that. And that he keeps that painting hooked into this thing on purpose to set people straight when they start to like, you know, just say some shit in his office and it's a secret weapon, scare them straight. That'd be so funny. But yeah, you know, there's just like stuff like this is rife in life, like these weird, I keep wanting to say, oh my God, how am I forgetting the word? But, you know, things that it's obviously an accidental lineup, but when it happens often enough, or when people are looking for the connections often enough, you just can't tell somebody That's not really what happened there. That's nothing. Anyway, so Dion in the chat, I love your devious mind, Natasha. See, this is why I can't be a priest. I would just be so like shady. So he says, you were in my prayers last night. I'm sorry for your loss. And she has to take a minute and like get guided by him because she forgot that she said she had a miscarriage. And when he asks about the father, she says something like he doesn't really exist. And eventually he just sort of nods and says, I understand. The funeral liturgy says that life is changed, not ended. And I've always loved that, if that's of any help. And she says, no, thanks very much, but I really am an atheist. And he says, oh yeah, I gathered that by the smelling of the Bible. And I love how awkward she is at the fact that he spotted that. So he has this notebook out that she grabs, and he says he's writing restaurant reviews for the parish newsletter, and it's embarrassing. I actually just came up with a really good title. And she asks what it is, and he says, no, it's not cool. And he finally reads, I'd spend 40 days and 40 nights in that dessert. And he says it, and she looks at him, and there's just no change in her expression or her smile or anything. And then she turns to the camera and says, oh God, I fancy a priest. Oh, that's my favorite. Like, the moment when you realize that you like somebody. There's nothing like that moment, especially if it's like not convenient for you to like them. I've talked a lot about like the moment with my ex-husband, Brendan, where he made a joke about how it was the first time I had ever spoken to him, and he was talking to somebody standing next to me, and they asked what clotted cream was. And he said, oh my God, it's so British. It couldn't be more British unless it wore a crown and a monocle. And I immediately stopped dead and went, oh no. Like, it was my whole self was like, this is going to be a problem. Shit. And with Owen, I mean, it was a little different because we didn't actually meet, but definitely him standing up to me, or standing up for me on Twitter, and me just being like, oh, he's just fighting this guy for no reason. Oh, wow. And then you just start to be like, shit, I'm thinking about this person. I'm like paying attention to their tweets. I'm like going through their timeline to like learn more about them. Now I'm looking at their photos. Oh no, what's happening? So yeah, anytime that you have this moment of somebody realizing shit, and it's especially good when it's for a reason like this, where it's the corniest thing. So stupid. What a bad joke. And yet that's it, you know? And because there are a lot of like, oh shit moments in movies where it's just like the guy is standing there and sees this beautiful woman walking towards him, her hair blowing in the wind, and he says, oh shit. And it makes no impression because it's like, yeah, she's super hot. That's not exciting or interesting or unusual, and it doesn't mean anything about her. But this is something where we know Fleabag well, and that joke tells us something. And we have gotten to know him a little. And I just really enjoyed this a lot. So, let me see her. Googling. Catholic priest, sex. Celibacy. All of the, results are just various versions of Kant. Definition of celibacy. To abstain from sexual relations in marriage. And then she just and looks at the camera and then Googles what happens when a priest has sex. And she Googles that, and we see her just staring at the screen, and all of these results apparently pop up, but we don't see her, like, what they are. And I have to imagine it's like mostly porn or sex scandals, right? I don't feel like she's going to get any results that she wants from that. I mean, I'd really like to know, like, out of the types of porn, and I mean, like, when I say types, I mean very broad strokes, like the pun intended. But like when you take some of like the more common role playing, you know, like teacher student, boss secretary, how popular is priest or nun porn? I would file those under the same thing, I think, in comparison with the others, you know, if you were to take like a cross section, because I have to imagine that like all of the pedophile scandals have to have soured that some, but also there can be like a sick kind of thrill with that as well that I could see making it more attractive. I'm very curious about that. I just find like what people go for regarding porn to be really compelling, because it can be so surprising. And then there'll be things that you're like, oh yeah, well, that makes sense, you know? Anyway, so we cut to the cafe. This bitch is bustling. The place looks full inside. Like there's somebody standing in the doorway, like they can't even quite get in. There are 4 tables outside with like 2 chairs at each table. And everybody, they're all full. And I think she says something like it's Chatty Wednesday. Oh, there's 6 tables outside. My bad. And I love Claire asking, she says, it's Chatty Wednesday. If you buy something, you have to have a chat with someone you don't know. Loneliness pays. I was really surprised that this was something that people wanted. Look, I just don't like talking to strangers. And it would be different if you were going into it with like, we're going to talk about an event in your life. And maybe that's how I should sort of like approach small talk conversations, is ask people to tell me something like an interesting story about something they've experienced. But most of the time, you just get an unfortunate diatribe about how masks are against American freedoms. And I just don't want to like risk engaging anybody that I haven't vetted extensively on the internet in conversation. I don't want to do it because it will end in one of like 3 ways. Either 1, you genuinely actually like this person. Super rare. 1%. And then you're like, well, I guess I'll never talk to you again. And either that's like something that sort of makes you smile for the rest of the day, is this nice conversation, or you're sad that you don't get to see that person again. But that's super rare. Then there's awkward exit. This person begins talking about something that you neither care about nor want to talk about necessarily. It can be something that's political and you have very strong opinions on, or it could be something that you just simply do not care about, and they are committed. And now you have to find a graceful exit from the conversation. And sometimes it's not so hard, but some people make it really fucking tricky, and you have to kind of be rude if you want to get away. And I encounter that more than probably anything. And I hate it so much because I don't want to be rude. I really don't like it. As much as one might take my brash personality as like not giving a shit, politeness is actually somewhat important to me. But oh my God, don't make me stand here and listen about your radishes in your garden and the way that you used a different soil this year for your radishes. And they're even bigger than those ones at the grocery store. Like just, and then there's 3, the conversation that makes you so angry that you don't know how to respond. And then later you remember like the way that they said such and such, and you come up with a perfect response. And that conversation was 6 hours ago. And there's absolutely nothing to be done. And now you will remember this squandered moment, this potential that was there for an insult or a retort that you will never get back. And it will simply haunt you the rest of your life. So those are the 3 possibilities when engaging with a stranger. I hope that you guys all remember them. It's very vital to your happiness and the happiness of those around you. I just don't advise talking to strangers. There. So anyway, That's apparently something that people like, though. So Claire is here. And this moment. So Claire says it's really not a big deal. It happens all the time because, of course she's asking about the checkup, whether she's gone to see the doctor. Evidently they went to the hospital. So I think that Fleabag's like, did you follow up on that? And at this point, this old man comes over and tries to talk to her. Really gets in her face, too, by the way. And she has to put him off in one of the most uptight, awkward moments. It's so good. So she says, I don't want it, the miscarriage. You have it. You're better at dealing with awful things anyway. Well, and when Fleabag says, I don't want it, she says, you took it, and everyone thinks you have it, so you have it. Okay, ouch. Shit, that's, I feel like that's bad, but okay, fine. At this point, Fleabag looks down and sees her polka-dotted trainers and realizes that she's going through some stuff. I just really don't want to talk to anyone or make too big a deal out of this, okay? And then we cut to Godmother, who is nonstop trying to talk about this with Fleabag. Oh, God, you guys. I hate, oh, God. I really, truly, like, the type of person that she is just depicted so beautifully on this show. Somebody who, oh God. I actually have a member of, not my extended family, but Owen's, who really has this vibe. And it's not even like she's the super passive aggressive type the rest of the time. So it's not like she's like Godmother, but in this scene and in that respect where she seems to want to bring up painful stuff and really like enjoys sort of the drama of it, but not in a way that is like causing conflict necessarily, but simply sort of liking to marinate in the pathos. That is just so real. And I just don't understand wanting to do that with an audience. Like for me, if I have pathos, I'll do that alone. Thank you. Bye. So she's setting them up to do this portrait that she has decided will be the wedding gift to their father. And she has Fleabag turn completely around so that her back is to her. And that evidently is going to be how she paints this, is Claire facing front and Fleabag facing completely to the back. And this results often in the two of them sort of turning to look at one another in this odd way that she keeps stopping them and being like, no, turn back around. And then, of course, brings up, I have 6 friends who had miscarriages. 5 of them never managed to produce a child afterwards. But one of, what is it? She said, oh my God, guys, I think I put on a different type of, I think I put on like an Arabic closed captioning there for a second. Might be. But the 6th one did and rather regretted it. So I think you've probably done the right thing. What are you talking about? Oh my God. And Claire asks, did you never want them? Meaning children. And I think she says, I'm still thinking about it. And I don't know if she's like talking about intending to get pregnant herself or adopting, but come on. This lady is not of an age to get pregnant anymore. Right? I think right. I just think right. Okay, whatever. Is Dad here? I texted him. Oh, I saw that. Oh, so he is here. Sorry, no, I've got his phone today. God damn. I love this show. That is a moment I have experienced where you just ask a regular question and you get an answer that is that begs so many more questions that you just drop it because you're like, you know what? I don't want to do this. And that's exactly what Fleabag does. Oh no, I have his phone today. I love that color. Moves right on. Because why would you, what? Oh God, she's the worst. And she says, I'm getting rid of it, but it was quite an adventure painting it. I had an orgasm finishing it. Oh my God. I hate her. So this whole conversation is just so awkward. So Claire gets some texts and she is having a pretty strong reaction to the texts that she is receiving. And we find out pretty quickly what is going on. Martin is planning to press charges against Fleabag for punching him in the face. And later on, when they run into each other at the church fete, he tries to trick her into apologizing because that can be taken as an admission of guilt. And I love that she doesn't fall for it. I really do. I don't know how this is going to go. There were a lot of witnesses. She did indeed punch him in the face. He's not wrong about that. But I just need her to get away with it, please. Pretty please. Just for a treat. That's all. That's all I'm asking. If she could just get away with it, that'd be great. So, oh my God, I forgot about this. She suggests Fleabag to make the canapes for Claire's event. And that's what she thinks that Claire is upset about. Martin wants to press charges against you for assault. I tried to talk him down, but to be fair, you did hit him fucking hard. I will provide you with exceptional legal advice as long as you don't tell anyone I'm providing you with exceptional legal advice. This is happening. I am mortified, but it is happening, okay? I will hire this lawyer to scare him off, and I will hire you to do the canapes. And he's a friend. The lawyer's a friend of a friend. He mainly defends rapists. He's had a high success rate then. Oh, undefeated. God, you guys, what commentary. It's just such, they just breeze right past it, but it's also the truth. And this is when we meet her lawyer friend. This is so weird, you guys. So she says, don't fuck him. And then he opens the door and Fleabag says, fucking hell, okay, and turns and looks at the camera. I believe it is meant to be an insinuation that this is a very attractive man. I'll be honest with you guys. This man looks like a giant baby. He just looks like a baby head. He really does. And later on, when he's eating, and he just has food all over his face, he just looked like a baby in a high chair with food all over his face. I cannot see this man in a sexual light in any way. I don't know. I don't know if there's he's just too boyish. There's just it's just, I can't do it. And the eyebrow, I don't see it. I don't see it for him. And we wind up getting the whole, interrogation, how many witnesses are there? Will you have to do community service? Did you definitely start it? And the most important thing is that you do not, under any circumstances, apologize. That can be taken as an admission of guilt. I assume you know the victim personally. And Claire says no. And let's not call him the victim, shall we? This begins Fleabag going back and forth on whether or not the two of them have slept together. And it seems by the end that she has settled on the fact that they have indeed slept together. I just want to be ahead of the game. That's a habit of yours, I've heard. You're going to have to tell me who said that, David. Oh God, I've got to get out. And she just gets her bag and she runs off. But yeah, this, I'm hoping will lead to, like, look, I had posited that perhaps Claire was into the guy that works in Finland who is new to the company. I don't really want her to get involved with this lawyer guy who defends rapists, but honestly, I'm rooting for literally anybody that isn't Martin at this point. He says he'll only talk you through potential proceedings if you'll go out for a drink with him. I thought he was after you. Oh, so did I, but my hair isn't great at the moment. Either way, it's very inappropriate. Don't sleep with him. I won't. I won't. I don't do that anymore. And she says, why? Are you ill? And then she sort of says that she senses maybe Fleabag has met someone. And Fleabag says he's sort of single, which I think probably sounds like he's going to leave his wife. I swear he's going to. But I just really... I want her to tell Claire the truth. Because I feel like Claire would root her on. You know? I feel like she would get it. There's just something about the energy between the two of them. They really understand each other, and I think it would be fine. What you did in the restaurant is unforgivable. Thank you. And you guys, I love it so much. So she hands over the session voucher to Claire, who, of course, insists that she's fine. I'd rather just have the money. And this gives Fleabag the idea that perhaps she should go and try and exchange it for the cash that was paid for it. I would be curious to know if that works, because I have always seen that things like that are basically like non-refundable. Like, you can't do that, you know? So then we go to her meeting with the therapist, played by Fiona Shaw, the goddess herself. I was so excited, you guys. I can't help but wonder if maybe Phoebe Foster-Wallace finished working on Killing Eve and was just like, I really need to work with that bitch again. Please get her back, because she's so good in that. And she's just this moment, as a therapist, she's very excellent. The weirdness of Fleabag trying to laugh off things and make jokes that when you don't know somebody well, you genuinely aren't sure if they're serious or not, and it really does cloud things a little bit. Making a joke when you have gotten to know somebody well enough, that's different, and I think that therapists actually generally do tend to appreciate that. But it's different when you're just meeting someone, and for example, she says, don't joke, and Fleabag says, oh, I don't know if I can do that, and laughs. But when she asks, was that a joke? She says no. Just really interesting, because she's trying to play it off as a joke. Of course. She adds the laugh to make it seem like, oh, isn't it funny that I'm not able to actually communicate without undercutting what I'm saying with irony or some sense of... That was a little too close to home, everybody. Yeah. My therapist actually kind of got on me about this. The fact that I use talking a lot and making jokes as a way to distance them from what I'm actually feeling, and thus not being vulnerable. Relatable. That's all I'm saying. So eventually she says something like, let's see. Why did you come in for counseling? Because, let's see. I'm trying to find the exact moment that she says her whole thing. Why do you think your father suggested you come for counseling? I think because my mother died and he can't talk about it, and my sister and I didn't speak for a year because she thinks I tried to sleep with her husband, and because I spend most of my adult life using sex to deflect from the screaming void inside my empty heart. Although I don't really do that anymore. I mean, and this ends with the therapist saying, so you are a girl with no friends and an empty heart. Your words. And when she says your words, that's really the thing that seems to make it's like Fleabag got flicked between the eyes. you know. It's just one of those moments that stops you short. And when she says that she hasn't been having sex, of course, Fleabag has to make a joke about how she's super horny. And she's like, okay, so the impulse is still there. Oh, yeah, the impulse is very, very much still there. It's just never the right person. So is there a particular person you're not having sex with? And this is when it sort of begins to fall apart. She tries to deflect, say, oh, he's not available. It's not a big deal. You know, I don't really even want to talk about this. I think that I'd like to just exchange the voucher for, you know, I don't know. I think I lied. It's not romantic. It's just, and finally, the therapist sort of like loses, I won't say loses her temper exactly. That doesn't feel fair. She's just sort of continuing to press, and she's really relentless about it. She doesn't smile or give her an out, I guess, is really what I'm saying. Because it's just so easy. This is something that I find really like, I am not good at this. Having a conversation that's basically confrontational, where you corner someone. And she's not cornering them in an aggressive way. She's letting them corner themselves, which is truly beautiful to watch. But I would always want somebody to grow more comfortable and give them an out. And I'm sure that's part of like the training of being a therapist, is being able to like detect when somebody is attempting to deflect you and homing in on that somehow. But it's just really uncomfortable, you know? So finally, eventually, Fleabag just blurts out, I want to fuck a priest. And she says, do you want to fuck a priest or do you want to fuck God? And she says, can you fuck God? And the therapist says, oh, yes, which was a very intriguing answer. Total confidence. It's not even a question. Of course you can. I was like, word? What experience have you got, Doc? So this is so good. She asks, what should she do? And the therapist says, you already know what you're going to do. Everybody does. You've already decided what you're going to do. So what's the point in you? And her face falls and she sort of swallows and says, you know what you're going to do, and looks back at her pad. And I love this. It is this is the kind of trick that I bet works like 99% of the time. Being like, yeah, you already know though, don't you? And then the person immediately, yeah, I guess I do. I love that she has come up against somebody who I just genuinely don't think that she has made that choice. And they go back and forth and back and forth. And all of a sudden, we smash cut to Fleabag, who is standing at the church fete handing out tickets to a raffle. And she runs into Harry, who has a baby. This was so wild because I really thought there would be more weirdness, but it's actually just kind of an amicable meeting, you know? They're both like doing better. They've both made healthier choices. And I love him talking about the birth took its toll. I can't remember it now, but the whole thing has really changed me. My emotions are up and down. My body just feels different. Oh my God, he's such a goon. So yeah, it's postnatal depression, but we're working through it. God. So at this point, the priest pops up. Harry tries to turn the baby toward him and he says, oh, I don't really know how to talk to babies. Sorry. And then immediately moves on. Honestly, that is a power move. I personally enjoy minor baby interactions. I don't like to be like around a baby. They stink. They're very loud. They're kind of unpredictably loud is the thing. And they just get into everything if they can walk around. If they can't, somebody always has to be holding them. They're just honestly a drag. But like, if I'm up in the supermarket and there's somebody with a baby right in front of me, I will deeply enjoy the short-term interaction of me and that baby in line. Because babies are mostly cute. Asterisk. But just being like, I don't know how to talk to babies, and then moving right on, that's pretty good, honestly. I rather like it. So, my God. So, at this point, Harry takes off, and the priest, I don't think that we know the priest's name, do we? Is he just priest, I feel like? She and he begin to chat, and this is when Pam just begins yelling, "The youthie band is about to play an ode to something," and then she like comes running up. Father, the youthie band. Yes, I heard you, Pam. I heard you. That moment where she sort of stops and looks at Fleabag, I feel like that moment might be a little more appraising than the first one. I said that she wasn't territorial. It might be that they have the occasional byblow, that comes by and is hot for the priest and then just disappears. And now that she has seen this chick twice, now she's beginning to be like, all right, wait, what's up with you? That might be what it is. I can't wait to see what goes on with Pam. I really hope that she becomes this weird part of the show. So then comes the conversation about Godmother's painting. I love the delivery of this line because she's telling the priest about how her godmother had an orgasm while she was painting it. And as she's saying the line, she's interrupting herself to the camera. Don't say it. Don't say it. I thought this was so well done. I really would love to know how many times she has had to like practice those kinds of lines where she's like partially to the camera, partially to us. And she asks him, and there's a sort of like look in her eye, or she tells him, but it looks like she's sort of trying to see what his reaction is going to be to her saying something like that. Because I think she's trying to tell whether talking about an orgasm and talking about sex makes the priest weird or uncomfortable. And instead he just sort of blinks and says, well, whatever gets you there. And that, I think, is kind of a pleasant surprise. I think she's pleased by that response. Like, oh my God. This is when Pam yells about a cupcake that they dropped, this whole thing. He reaches over and touches her arm, and she practically glows. Arm touch. Oh my God, it's so good. So it turns out that the weird stepson is in the youthie band, which means that fucking Martin is here. God, I hate him so much. He comes up right behind her and whispers in her ear like a goddamned creep. I just hate him. And when she says that she's helping the priest, he says, wow, you do love a challenge, don't you? I want to say I'm sorry for saying what I said. I'm sorry for what you went through. I'm sorry. And she can totally tell what it is that he's trying to do. And she won't give him the satisfaction. She won't say it. And he finally drops it. And then says, she and I have never been better. I think you had a big part in that. I'm happy. And she says, I'm happy you found a way to deflect from your pitiful, self-sabotaging, ego-driven, masturbatory, pawing, insidious, overwhelming mediocrity, only to finally figure it out that your very core, you are a weakie. And she stops and looks at the camera and says, damn. Ah, she was so close. A rant like that, once you start to think about it too much, it just derails itself. You got to be completely in the moment, baby. You just got to let yourself go. I'm impressed with how you keep bouncing back. I really am. You're a strongie. Oh, I really want him to just burst into flames. So Jake comes up. He's looking for Claire. And he's got a sort of like harness on him that it looks like Martin leads him around by. He reaches out and hugs, not Claire, Fleabag, and he grabs him and yanks him back with it. I thought for a second that this was something to do with his instrument, but it's not attached to it. So I think that's what it is. It's meant to like manage him. And it seems pretty clear to me from the way that he is behaving that he is meant to be like neurodivergent. And thus the way that Martin talks to him is so much grosser. First of all, he tries to defend himself by saying to his dad it was only a hug. And his dad makes a bunch of jokes about how you have to be better than that around this firecracker. It's like you're not allowed to say that kind of thing nowadays. You know, that whole thing about just basically the Me Too movement is out of control. Can't even joke around anymore. And there's just this dismissive attitude that he has to his kid, and the way that he's like grabbing him, pulling him like he's a pet. It just felt super gross, you know? So they walk away. He says to Fleabag, like, I wanted her to be happy, and she has been happy until she saw you. And that really gets to her in a way that I don't want her to like take seriously. This guy is just trash. Don't listen to anything he says. So they walk away, and then Jake comes up to her and he leans in and says, tell her to leave him. And she says, what? And he repeats it. Tell her to leave him. And I'm really curious about it. So we've seen about him like getting into the bathtub with Claire. And obviously, like I said, he just doesn't understand boundaries. There's just something going on here with him, like needing a connection to somebody. And for understandable reasons, apparently not having that connection with his own father. I don't know what happened to his mother or where she is or what the deal is there. But he says that and walks away. And Fleabag looks at the camera and says he's going to kill someone one day. And I had a bit of a sad face reaction to that because I don't feel like that was threatening at all. I was a little bit saddened to see that, like, this kid who obviously just communicates really differently is being portrayed as, like, dangerous. He's just so not dangerous to me. I don't get that from him at all. And I felt a little bit sad that that was immediately what she saw after this conversation. To me, this is an indicator that he knows that Claire is in a bad relationship, that he cares about her, and maybe he knows something about his father that nobody else knows that would make it a good idea for her to get the fuck out. Like, for me, I would have asked him a lot more questions, or at least have assumed the best of him. But her response to him just felt really like, it's pretty much the first time, I think, that Fleabag has had a point of view that I'm genuinely like, what? Why? Where did you get that? I just did not care for it. And it felt a little bit gross to me, you know, especially like in light of the fact that he keeps being called creepy Jake. It just feels like he is somebody who's just neurodivergent, who doesn't seem to have anybody paying attention to that or getting the tools to like communicate with him effectively or establish with him what good boundaries are. And that's not really his fault. That's everybody around him's fault, right? Like, I don't know. I really did not care for this, and I'm hoping that they like get it together. So the priest runs after her, and it turns out that he's coming to get the coconut back. And I guess she was like walking out with it. I don't know what it was that she wanted the coconut for, maybe just to eat, but it was odd. And then he has a Bible where he has marked pages for her to read, and he says, like, she kind of backs away from him, and finally she agrees to take it, even though he insists, like, I'm not trying to, just have a read. I'd like to know what you think. And if you ever want to talk about stuff, I'm here, with a G&T, of course. I really want to know what the fuck it says in that Bible. He says, I'd like you to come, if it helps. And I'm like, did he highlight all of the, like, is it Song of Solomon? There's something in the Bible that's, like, actually super sexual. I would love it if that was what he highlighted. But, you know, I guess we'll find out. Or not. We better find out. I'll be real mad. So Rashawn says, oh yeah, you can't get that money back. Rashawn, I didn't even see that you were in the chat. Are you talking about, that must have been way back when I was talking about the voucher. I'm sorry, girl. This is what happens. I miss this fucking chat because I'm like reading transcripts. But yeah, so just let Martin get fucking killed or lit on fire or something really embarrassing. Just something really embarrassing, please. It's just so weird because he's like impossible to embarrass. You know, he has no shame at all. So like, what do you even do to somebody like that? Ugh. Okay, I gotta wrap up, but thank you again very much to Bert for commissioning this episode. Let me check and see when the next one is. April 27th, so a couple weeks, is episode 3, and then episode 4 isn't until May 25th, and it's a live watch. So that's interesting. I'm excited to see what that's about. All right, guys, well, I will see you in a couple weeks with episode 3. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.